Hi, welcome to this presentation on animal usage in the EU. In this presentation, I will discuss why we use animals in daily life, really, look at the data from historical reports. Then I will look at a more detailed report on animal use in 2018, as this is the most recent report. Uh, then I will discuss some possible reasons for the changes in data, and in the end I will end the presentation with some concluding remarks. First of all, we have pets. I think this is very common. A lot of people have pets, and people have pets for company. It's a very general concept. Next, we have farm animals. This is obviously for nutrition. Uh, think about meat, milk, eggs, whatever you can think of, really. But also the materials that come from animals. Think of wool, for example. These are all byproducts for the main part, but we still use them. Then we have zoo animals. Zoo animals are interesting because they are used for entertainment purposes for the public, but they are also used for scientific research um, and for species conservation. Not something you would initially think of when you think about zoo animals, because usually you go to the zoo for entertainment, but they actually have a purpose as well. Lastly, we have scientific testing, which is the main uh, topic of this presentation. For scientific testing, you have the pharmacokinetic and toxicological testing of new medicines, for physiological studies, and for testing of food additives or other chemicals. In the past, cosmetic testing was also done on animals, but this was banned in 2004 for finished products and in 2009 for cosmetic ingredients. So animal research is done to advance scientific research and development of medicine. The first type of research done on animals is the so-called fundamental or basic research. This helps us understand how animals and also humans behave, because there is a lot of similarity between the two, and how we develop and function biologically. This is the major type of animal research that is done in the EU and tends to be publicly funded for the most part. The second type of animal research is targeted research. This is more focused on studying how diseases work in living organisms and to develop medication or vaccines. The next field is related to toxicological and safety testing. This is a mandatory procedure imposed by European legislation. Over half of the animals used in these safety evaluations are for human and veterinary medicine. The remainder is used to test household and industrial chemicals, herbicides, fertilizers, and food additives. These types of research are funded by private organizations. The remainder of animal usage is related to mandatory production and quality control procedures required by authorities for diagnosis of diseases, for education and training, or other purposes. Think about the zoo animals, for example. Now, the animal usage over the years. As we can see by the blue bars, there is not really a good trend to be seen. In 1991, which was the first report on animal usage, almost 12 million animals were used. However, this was done by 10 member states, and in 1996 there was a small decrease in animal use of about 150,000 animals. However, 5 additional member states were part of this report. As you can see by the gray line over here, you can see a large increase in member states between 2002 and 2008. During this period, the animal usage increases somewhat and then slightly decreases again. And after this procedure, when the EU member states remain fairly constant over here, the animal usage has a small decrease, which is good to see. However, it's hard to draw a conclusion from this data because the data is maybe not as accurate as you might expect, because most of this data is voluntarily reported and not mandatory. Over the years, the legislation has changed, and these reports have been more accurate, especially in recent years. So if we look at the final 4 years, from 2015 to 2018, for example, we can see that the number of member states is fairly stable. In fact, they are all 28. However, in 2018, Norway was added to the report, kind of messing up the numbers a bit, which is why they are in a different bar over here. Because, as you can see, 2018 has a lower number of animals used in the 28 EU member states. However, because the report includes Norway, it appears as if the number is higher. Now for the animal usage in 2018. As we can see, just over 52%, just over half of the animals used are mice, and then 26% of animals used are fish, which is quite interesting. Mice are obviously used because of how easy they are to handle and their genetic similarity to humans. They're small, they're low cost, easy to handle. However, fish seem a little bit out of place initially, but realistically, they aren't as different. They're also small, they're very useful for scientific research, they're easy for genetic alterations, and they are used to replace mice and rats in research, in fact. In 2017, for example, there were over 60% of the animals used were mice, and only 13% were fish. So there is a pretty large increase in the use of fish. Then in 2018, we have 10% of the animals were rats, 6% were other animals, 6% were birds, and then 0.3% were amphibians, and 0.3% were dogs and cats, and non-human primates. Now I will look into the animal usage for specific purposes. Just under half, with 46%, basic research comes in. This includes research into animal behavior, the nervous system, immune system, and the list goes on. Basically, the study of animals and biology of the animals. Then there is the translational and applied testing, which focuses on testing of medicine for both animals and human diseases, but also the diagnosis of diseases and animal welfare. Regulatory use mainly involves potency and safety testing, as well as toxicological tests and various other mandatory tests that must be done to get a medicine approved. About 64% of the animals used in this category are for medicinal products for human use, and then 16% is used for veterinary medicine. The remaining 20% is used for other applications, as I mentioned previously. Think of industrial or household chemicals. Animals used for routine production, coming in at 5%, are used for blood-based products, for example. And then the other category, focuses on higher education or training, protection of the natural environment, or species preservation. Now, what has changed? Over the years, more research into medicine is done, which is quite obvious. More knowledge is gained. We try to cure everything, and this naturally leads to an increase in animal use. However, science has progressed in such a way that we are able to use alternative methods to animal testing. For example, using non-sentient material, in vitro models, cell cultures, computer models. These are all methods to completely replace animal usage. Then There are also changes in legislation, like the data, for example, is far more accurate right now. Um, yeah, there are the bans on cosmetics, for example. There are a lot of things that change the use of animals. Then, in the end, I think there is a small reduction in animal use that we can clearly see. Um, However, the historical data probably should not be interpreted that way, and they also mentioned that in the reports. In my opinion, I think we're on the right track, but we still need to do better in terms of animal use. We still use like about 9 million animals in the 28 member states, and this really needs to go down overall.